Okay, so let's now talk about the Democratic Party and the Iowa State Democratic Party. The timing of this could not be worse, but the reputation of the Democratic Party is in shambles after the absolute fiasco of Monday night's Iowa caucus. Now, there are essentially two sides to this, and I alluded to this earlier. There are people who are saying this is nothing other than a technical snafu. It's good that it happened early in Iowa in the first caucus rather than, at some later point. We can now prevent it from happening again. I believe it's Nevada that was scheduled to use the same app or tech system for their upcoming vote. And now they are deciding not to because of what happened in Iowa. Okay, that's one side. It's a technical snafu, and the timing of it is really bad. The other side has gone into more conspiratorial stuff. And I don't say that pejoratively. There's a definition for what a conspiracy would be. And there are the gist of it is that it links everything that happened on Monday to a DNC, Pete Buttigieg consultant conspiracy, mostly to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination. That there are variations, there are different flavors of the conspiracy theory, but that's roughly the gist of it. So what's important is very often people fall for a conspiracy theory merely because the motive seems to check out absent anything else. So let's just break it down piece by piece. And we shouldn't be afraid to do this. This is not out of hand dismissing a conspiracy, but it is also not irrationally feeding it. The first part is motive. There is no doubt that the DNC and the establishment does want to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination. We've been seeing countless examples of how this manifests. Very early on, there were Stop Bernie meetings. Pete Buttigieg was part of those meetings. We are seeing Hillary Clinton reappear more and more in the public spotlight, very often to criticize Bernie on the Howard Stern show, in that recent docuseries, on the recent podcast, whose name escapes me, but I talked to you about on Monday. So there's no question that there is an establishment effort to try to prevent Bernie Sanders from being the nominee. That's not really the focus of the Monday fiasco. I tend to arrange hypotheses from simplest to most complex. The conspiracy theories about Iowa, while possible, seem less likely to me than what we know to be true, which is, unfortunately, most people aren't good at their jobs. Incompetence is everywhere. The 80-20 rule tells us about this. Hanlon's razor tells us not to attribute to malice what can be appropriately attributed to incompetence or ignorance. That still is the most likely scenario to me. But importantly, and I'm trying to do this more and more since reading Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets, when I say I think it's more likely that this is incompetence rather than a conspiracy, I'm not saying that it's 100%, right? What I am saying is that if I had to bet, I believe it is more likely that this is incompetence and not a conspiracy. We should talk more in these terms. None of us know for sure, but if you said to me, what would my return have to be on a dollar bet for me to bet that it's a conspiracy versus that it is merely incompetence? I would need a bigger return on the conspiracy bet in order to make it, because I think it is less likely. If the Iowa Democratic Party was going to rig the results, wouldn't they rig it so that the person who gets the most delegates would also get the most number of votes? Because when we looked at the reports of voting as of right now, with 71% reporting, this may have changed by the time that you guys watch this clip or listen to today's show, Bernie Sanders has more raw votes, but Pete Buttigieg has more delegates. That is creating way more questions. It is getting people fired up. It is getting people saying this is just like Trump winning the Electoral College but losing the popular vote. Bernie had more votes. Bernie should have more delegates. If they were rigging it, they would rig it so that the total vote count also favors Pete Buttigieg, if that was the point of this entire thing. Now, as far as the DNC being in shambles, Nathan Robinson wrote a piece in The Guardian where he says it is a technical snafu, but it is a technical snafu that could not have come at a worse time. And it is a technical snafu which directly helps some people and directly hurts some people. The setup is 2016, where the DNC was widely slammed for putting their thumb on the scale for Hillary against Bernie Sanders. This includes superdelegates. This includes the initial scheduling of debates, including like on a Sunday night on a 3-day weekend, which just hurts any challenger and reinforces the de facto frontrunner. The whole story you likely are familiar with from 2016. So since 2016, there's been this question of, well, what is the DNC going to do this time? Are they going to play more fair? They did the right thing by removing superdelegate voting from the first round at the DNC. I don't want to rehash the details of that, but that makes the process more democratic. But suspicions were still high going into 2020 and the primary that things were not going to be totally on the up and up. And very quickly, we started seeing Hillary Clinton jump in to slam Bernie at a number of different opportunities. There are discussions happening in the basements and back hallways of the DNC about, well, maybe we push superdelegate voting back to the first round at the DNC. Debate qualification rules are being changed to potentially allow Michael Bloomberg into the debates, which is, again, not something that is going to help Bernie Sanders. So in short, tensions are running super high, and this is the exact time that the DNC should not fail. And Monday they failed. Their entire tech system for the Iowa caucus failed. There are people saying, well, it's more the Iowa Democratic Party, not the DNC. This is perceived as all part of the same apparatus, and it looks terrible. The DNC comes away looking incompetent, changing rules, a failing app, unable to report results at exactly a time when many Americans are considering, do I stay home? Do I vote for Trump? I don't really like Trump, but the DNC seems like it's in over its head. And then you read about the DNC failing miserably and embarrassingly at the first opportunity to count votes. The optics are a train wreck. And by the way, the coin flips for the uneven delegate counts in Iowa, I get why it's done this way. I understand that the meaning of one delegate in one precinct is tiny, tiny, tiny. But when you're selecting who's going to run against Donald Trump, you are just opening yourself up to criticism and ridicule by using coin flips to decide about delegates. Now that this happened, who is going to trust the DNC to run primaries for the rest of the election? And just as importantly, Donald Trump and the right have been trying to frame the DNC as exactly this. Trump and the right have been saying the DNC is incompetent. The DNC can't run an election. The DNC is trying to screw Bernie again. They're unable to get out of their own way. And the DNC hands Trump a gold mine of fodder. And on Monday night, Donald Trump, within minutes of this fiasco, was tweeting about it like we went through on yesterday's show. It's a comedy of errors, and it all is another little push towards the outcome of a Trump reelection. We'll talk about very good poll numbers for Trump on the bonus show today and also on tomorrow's program. But this could not have come at a worse time for the Democratic Party.